Hey everybody, Syntax77 back with you, taking a look today at a beast of a compact flashlight as I continue my obsession with devices that emit light, and this one emits quite a lot of light, especially relative to its size. 12,000 lumens. Could be one of the most powerful compact flashlights out there. I don't know. If you know of one, feel free to post that in the comments section below. But this thing, like I said, does seem to be quite a beast. For its size, puts out a lot of light. Now, those of you on my channel that are into backpacking, especially ultralight backpacking, are most likely completely freaking out right now, and that's understandable. This is a 23-ish ounce flashlight, not something you would everyday carry or throw in a backpack on a fast and light adventure. This here is a much more purpose-built flashlight for a specific demographic that needs some serious lighting needs. If you're just going out on the trail or carrying something in your jeans pocket, maybe get a $15 pen light like that Thorfire there. Or for my fast and light backpacking viewers out there, maybe just hold out for my next review. This much tinier 400 lumen headlamp, it's a running headlamp, the HS2, but that might be a little more up your alley. Perhaps you would skip this. But for first responders, military, law enforcement, maritime use, search and rescue, etc., that needs a flood of light, yet a small form factor and good ergonomics, maybe hang in there. This just might be the light for you. And now also, we should probably get the elephant out of the room, going back to that specific demographic that this flashlight would be for. The price tag on it is nowhere near entry level as well. You get what you paid for, and if you want a serious system, well, prepare for sticker shock if you've never looked at a high-end flashlight before like this. In fact, there are Amazon product links in the description below if you want to see the current prices and availability on this guy. And of course, using those links is a great way to support the channel if you enjoy these videos. Now, this light is a follow-up to the original X7 by Olight. This one has made some improvements, the most notable being the old X7 went to 9,000 lumens, and this one goes to the aforementioned 12,000 lumens. And this light is very new, at least at the time of this recording. It actually just came out about 2 days ago, and Olight sent it to me pre-release about 2 weeks ago so I could get my hands on it and use it. So for this video, we'll be going over my experiences with it in that time, as well as general features, how to use it, functioning, etc. So here we go. First things first, let's take a look at the box. So you get the box here, and well, what's inside? Let's take a look at that, and then we'll flip it over and read some of the overviews and specs. When I flip it open like so, you'll see it comes with a case, a belt loop on there so you can put it on your belt if you want, or there's like a D-ring here that you can affix it on your gear in some other way. On the back, you will notice that blue stitching on there, and there's a reason for that. Right now, it's set to, I believe, 50 millimeters across. But if you are used to wearing a larger belt or have gear that needs to be mounted on a larger belt type system, all you have to do is take a seam ripper and remove those stitches, and it will pop open another 20 millimeters to 70 millimeters max to get it affixed to your gear. Next up in the box is the lanyard right there, and that can be affixed to the flashlight. We'll see how in a little bit, but you do get that, and it has the adjustable slider on there, so you can slide that back and forth to tighten it on your wrist or any other way that you'd like to use that. Instruction booklet, that goes over the stuff that I'll be talking about myself in this video. And the last item we have is this here wall charger that it comes with. Two things to point out about this before you just brush it to the side, assuming that you have plenty of USB chargers laying around. You might not want to do that for one of two reasons. A, it's not a micro USB, it is a USB-C. You see that slightly different shape to it there. That is kind of emerging. It looks like it's going to be the next kind of standard in electronics charging and power and data situations, as opposed to that micro USB. You may already have one of these laying around, but chances are you might be one of those people like me that have only gotten a few devices so far that use this. So keep that in mind. Hold on to this cord. And on top of that, if you look at the stats on the back of the charger here, you'll notice that the output on this is 4 amps, which is a bit higher than a lot of chargers out there. You might have a charger laying around, it looks like a standard USB charger. If you look at it, it might only have a 1 or 2 amp output, which means if you use it with this flashlight, just like cell phones that are intended for higher amperages, it will charge, but not necessarily as efficiently or quickly. So keep that in mind. So that's what's in the box. You got a max runtime of 30 days. Of course, that's going to be at lower lumens. We'll get into that. A throw of 380 meters, and it's IPX7 rated, which means it is submersible up to 1 meter. And you'll notice the LED type is the Cree XHP70, and there's 3 of them. XHP is Cree's extreme high performance line, and it's the 70 version. Now, for example, previously I reviewed the little pocket Olight X7R Nova, and it had a single Cree XHP 50, the little brother, if you will, of the XHP 70. Speaking of those LEDs, let's look at the runtimes on the back there, shall we? And there are several modes. So you got a night light mode, which is 10 lumens, runs for 30 days. You got low, 500 lumens for 14. Now, you can tell this thing's a beast because the whole scale is kind of interesting. I mean, low at 500 lumens is more powerful than just about most of the flashlights I have. Moving on down to medium, you have 1,000 lumens for 6 hours of runtime. And then we get to high, which triples it at 3,000 lumens, 2 hours and 10 minutes. And then we get into the turbo modes. Now I will show you how to access all these modes. It's quite simple if you're familiar with any other Olights. It seems to work just like my H2R over there. But anyway, the turbo modes you're going to access a little bit differently. The first one's going to give you 7,000 lumens, and then you see 3,000 written below it along with 2 different runtimes. So the basic explanation on that is this. The light has a safety system in it to make sure it doesn't overheat. It's constantly measuring the temperature of the unit. So when you first turn on turbo, it's going to boot up at 7,000 lumens, and it will gradually kind of fade into that. You'll notice when you're using the light. After about 12 minutes, and that is an estimate because it's based on temperature, which can vary a lot, especially with, say, environmental conditions. If you're using it on a winter expedition versus, say, out in the desert, it's going to shut down either quicker or slower. But after about 12 minutes or so, it will step down to 3,000 lumens to protect itself from overheating, at which point it'll run for another 110 minutes at 3,000 lumens. And once it cools down enough, you can go ahead and try entering turbo again, and it should continue to do the same thing. Now, of course, it's all relative, right? If you just got stepped down because it overheated and you only waited like a minute before turning it back into turbo, it's not necessarily going to go 12 minutes again. It might go 30 seconds because it's already up at that higher temperature and needs to shut down quicker. Moving along from standard turbo, we have Turbo S, and that is going to give you 12,000 lumens, which will step down to 3,000 lumens after about 3 minutes, after which you'll get an hour and 20 or 2 hours or so of runtime. And some other stats down there, you can see it is drop rated to about 3 feet or 1 meter. And the weight officially listed is 23.5 ounces. I weighed it myself on my trusty kitchen scale, and it actually came to 5 grams below that, 660 versus the 665 listed. That's probably because the lanyard's not on it, I'm guessing. 670 with the lanyard. So it's either 660 or 670 depending on whether or not you have the lanyard. And then the case is 35 grams. Entire kit together, 705 grams, or 1 pound, 8 ounces, 3/4. So we're talking 1.5 pounds for the full system if you're wearing this on your hip or something. Or I think a lot of people, you'd probably have this in your vehicle. It would fit quite nicely in the side compartment of a door or something like that. Or if you have a serious need for it, it wouldn't be the end of the world to carry 1.5 pounds on your hip. It's really not a whole lot different in terms of weight than carrying, say, a sidearm. It's not to say you would not notice it, but it is doable. Now, speaking of the way it steps down the lumens in the turbo modes based on the temperature, there's also another feature on this. If you look down into the lights there, and there's our 3 Cree LEDs, there's also here this little dot. That is actually a sensor so that when this thing gets close to objects, it will step down the lumen output as well to avoid situations where maybe it rolls up against a cushion or some sort of enclosed space and starts to overheat rapidly. So what will happen is I'm just going to put this into a high mode right now. So here it is in high. I'm probably completely blowing out my camera right now, but watch as I get close to the box. And it has stepped down, and I can tell that it's stepped down because remember I was on high, there's medium, and there's high again. So it put itself into low just by getting, there it goes, close. That is a nice feature for safety. Now let's get into how to operate this. And the first thing I'll go over is the lockout mode, because it's very likely that you got it from the factory brand new and it's in lockout mode, and that might be a little frustrating if you don't understand what's going on. The lockout mode is there so that you can put this thing in a state where it won't accidentally engage, especially at those high modes, which, like I said, it does have those safety features on it, but to avoid that, you can lock it out, especially because the power on this is self-contained. You don't just unscrew it and throw new batteries in it. It recharges off of that USB-C and everything is contained in there. I'm sure if you were resourceful, there's a tiny little screw right there that you could tinker with. I do not recommend that, of course. I don't know what actually is underneath that screw, and I'm sure Olight would officially say not to do that either, but this is an enclosed battery system. It uses proprietary batteries, most likely inside there. I would assume there's a handful of Olight's proprietary batteries, such as in this removable H2R, something like that. There are probably some 18650s that are loaded up in there. But anyway, getting off of that tangent and back to the matter at hand, how do you enter that lockout mode? Well, you're just going to hold this down. It enters Moonlight, continue holding until it turns off. Now it's in lockout, and now we'll notice that if I press this, all that happens is, for the amount of time I'm holding it, Moonlight comes on. It doesn't stay on. So now it is locked out. Great. How do you unlock it? Very simple, very similar. Hold it down, it goes to Moonlight, continue holding, it blinks, it stays on. Now if I turn it off, on, it functions as normal. So that's your lockout. Now, you also got a preview just there of Moonlight mode at 10 lumens. That mode is accessible when the flashlight is off. It's actually the only mode, I believe, that you can only access when the flashlight's off. And all you do is when it's in that off state, here, let's turn it off. You're going to hold the light down and it comes on. And that is Moonlight mode, 10 lumens. And now from that Moonlight mode, let's go to low. So if I just click and hold, it goes to low, click and hold again, medium, again, high. And also what you can do is just hold this down and it'll cycle through low, medium, high. Moonlight is excluded. Like I said, you only get to it from a power off state. But right now, if I hold this down, medium, high, low, medium, high, and on for infinity, right? We'll turn that off. And now let's talk about the turbo modes. So how do you get to those? From either an off state or already on state, you're just going to double click and it will go into turbo mode, or turbo regular you might call it. And then if you double click again, it'll go into turbo S as they call it. So double click once and there it is, completely blowing out everything on camera. That is turbo at 7,000 lumens until it gets too hot and steps down, of course. Now if I double click again, I will step it up one more. And now we're at 12,000, which is lighting up my basement quite nicely right now and completely destroying the image, I'm sure. If I double click again, it's going to alternate back and forth between those two turbo modes. So double click and it's back to 7,000. If I turn the unit off now, it'll obviously be off, but next time I turn it on, it'll go to high, and that's because of the memory modes. Now there are some things to specifically know about the memory on this flashlight. There are memory modes, meaning that whatever setting your light is on the last time you used it, when you turn it on again, it'll go back to that same output setting. But the memory modes are only for night light, low, medium, and high, not for turbo or turbo S. And high, the memory mode for that, there's a caveat. It'll memorize high. So let's say you're using it on high, you turn it off. 5 minutes later, you turn it on, it's back on high. It's memorized it. That only lasts for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, it'll revert to medium. So to use this in another example, if you were using the light on high and then you sat it down and 20 minutes later or anything over 10 later, you came back and turned it on, you'd find yourself in medium. And then of course, if you didn't like that, you just cycle back up to high. Now anything below high, it'll just indefinitely keep that in memory. You might be wondering, what about the turbo modes? What do they do in terms of memory? Well, turbo or turbo S, if you use those and then turn the light off, it will be memorized as high for 10 minutes, like I said, and then the same things apply. All right, so you're never going to accidentally turn this thing on and be in turbo mode. You're going to have to double click specifically to do that, and that's probably a good thing because you can really mess up your vision or someone else's with this light, even on high mode, bouncing off of objects. Just testing this thing, I find my eyes getting a little hurt sometimes. It's a serious amount of light in this and should be respected. And that pretty much covers the light modes. It does basically a very floody kind of light, but it does reach pretty far relative to that because it is just so powerful. It really does put out a lot of light. I would say for like search situations, this thing would be awesome. Out on the water in a boat or any situation where you just really need a massive amount of search capability, this thing's going to be great. Also, if you're not worried about weight, the fact that this thing does the nightlight mode for 30 days is pretty crazy amount of light. It's not always about the light output. It might be you just want a lot of battery runtime, and this guy's going to give you that even in those higher modes. I mean, we got 500 lumens at 14 hours rated. That's pretty good. Speaking of power, let's take a look at this guy and its features. And the first thing I want to look at is on the back there. You will notice that little power icon, and you'll see the USB icon along with these arrows. So underneath of there is how you charge this guy with the aforementioned USB-C we saw, right? All you got to do is twist. Look at that. Just appeared. There's your USB-C. Plug into the wall charger and you are ready to go. And then to get your water resistance back, slide it back shut. And of course, you want to make sure you do that after each charge. Just get in the habit of doing it or checking it before you go out for the day, night, etc. Because that is one potential weakness of this compared to, say, a flashlight like this H2R, where it's sealed on the end all the time. It just has a little cap that I put on there magnetically, which means there's no way for me to accidentally go out in a situation where this thing might actually get its waterproofness compromised. On this guy, you've got that slider system, so just something to be aware of. You want to make sure that that thing is, after charging, put back in the water resistant mode. It is IPX7, like I said, which means it can survive submersions up to 1 meter. Now, the way I personally look at that is I'm not going to purposely put this thing in a situation where I'm submerging it. To me, that just means since it's capable of that, that it's going to be just fine in a heavy rain situation or the occasional accidental or unwanted, at least, submersion. Let's say you drop it in a puddle, for instance, or you have to quickly go into the water to retrieve something and you run into waist deep water. Afterwards, you realize, hey, I didn't have time to take off my flashlight. Well, you should be just fine with this guy. And it does function just fine underwater. You can use the buttons and all the features, and you'll see that it just keeps on ticking. Probably could turn your pool into quite a pool party as well with the strobe function there. Moving on, the body of the flashlight is that aircraft style aluminum, strong yet light, and you'll see the power button is on the side. Now, I don't know that it's going to come through on film, but this thing has a motion sensor in it as well, so anytime you pick it up, you'll notice that this will slowly glow in and out. The way they describe it in the book is it's almost like it's breathing, and I think that's accurate. It will pulsate a green light when the battery is in a good condition, and it'll switch to red to let you know it's time to charge this guy. So that is a nice way to indicate. Here, I don't know that I can, probably not. It's very faint, and of course that's because they don't want it to actually be much of a drain on the battery, but that will give you a quick look at the battery status of your light. Moving along from that, you will notice the nice grooves on there, which give you some good purchase with this, and along with that nice big button, even when wearing gloves, you'll find some nice tactile feedback and grip when this thing is wet, and you can quickly find that light. You can feel it pretty good there because of the recess, and you're good to go. You also notice some pretty pronounced finger grooves on that one side there, so you can really get your fingers around this guy. That is nice, and some ridges on the tail cap as well. On the opposite side from the finger grooves, there are these indentations to give it some more purchase in your hand. And that brings us around to this here. Now, at first I thought this was some sort of button, and it is not. It is actually, even though it kind of sounds clicky, right? It's actually for the lanyard. So if I just pop it up like so, now I have a hole that I can put my lanyard through. So if you wish to have the lanyard on there, you can use that. And if not, click it down and it will be nice and sleek again. And a close-up look at the front bezel area here. There are those Cree XHP 70 LEDs, all three of them. You see the orange peel kind of texture in there to diffuse the light a bit, give it a nice dispersed throw. And in my usage, I find this to have a very floody kind of light. It really lights up the entire area. And then towards the middle, it's definitely a lot hotter for your main focus area. Now, that being said, I don't notice any artifacts or weird kind of junk in that light beam, but it is more pronounced brightness towards the middle and then a softer flood towards the outside. It really does light up a huge area. I used it in my backyard for testing in these shots, and I'm surprised the cops didn't come, especially when I used the strobe light function. Man, that is disorienting. Now, you can debate on that all you want. I'm not here to talk about that. But if you're somebody that believes the strobe light is good for you as far as defensive applications, this thing has a heck of a strobe, and I haven't covered that. I just remember that. I do apologize. Strobe mode, you're going to triple click like so. Oh God. and I'm getting a seizure. I mean, just from bouncing off of the table right there, it's actually, yeah, not really the best feeling for my eyes. So like I said, you can debate the usefulness of that, but it does have a strobe. And speaking of strobe, it does not have an SOS mode. They did put the strobe light, more of a defensive application, instead of the SOS on here. So there you have it. This light is pretty straightforward, pretty specific in its use. It is for a serious amount of light in a small package, and for a lot of people it's going to be overkill. For a lot of other people it's probably going to be something that you've been waiting for, because you may have been carrying something a lot bigger than this. Heck, I remember those old police mag lights that were probably, what, a handful of lumens? Nowhere near this. I don't know exactly what they went up to, but you know, the old incandescent mag lights that cops used to carry, mostly for lighting needs, I'm sure. But anyway, those guys, I mean, this is probably, you'd stack 3 of these to get the same length. Definitely at least 2 of them. Whereas this is actually, although it's very wide, you could call this a palm size 12,000 lumen light right there. Of course, your palm might get tired after a little bit at 1.5 pounds, but pretty serious lighting in your hand. And like I said, pretty straightforward system, so that just about covers it. If you're the type of person whose situation matches the things we've talked about in this video, and you're looking for some serious light, you may want to consider at least checking out the Olight X7R Marauder. Until next time, I'm Syntax77, and you have fun out there.